It's October 19th, 2018. It's time for V10 Sports, and we're going to talk CFL football week 19. Week 19 seems so weird to say. Week 19. The NFL doesn't have 19 weeks. Maybe it should. I don't know. Get rid of preseason games. I don't know. The NFL doesn't need more games. It's like those. I don't know how the poor CFL players do it. They play two more regular season games than the NFL does, and it's like I'm sure those players are hurting at the end of the year. But we're getting close to playoff time. We've already got 4 teams that have clinched playoffs. Basically, Saskatchewan, Calgary, Ottawa, and Hamilton. They're all locked in. They're in the playoffs. Now, nobody's locked up a division yet, but Calgary can lock up their division tonight if they can, or tomorrow night if they can beat Saskatchewan. Hamilton and Ottawa are probably going to take this thing all the way to the house. It's probably going to go to the last week. Hamilton and Ottawa are doing a home at home for their last 2 games of the season. You know, for those two playing each other the last 2 times, I think Hamilton might even have another game after this. Both teams have only played 15, so they still got 3 more left. But right now it looks like Winnipeg would get in, and BC would get the crossover spot. Pretty much I think Montreal and Toronto are done. This really just has to do with, Winnipeg, BC, and Edmonton deciding who's going to get those last 2 playoff spots. Basically, you can just say Toronto and Montreal, nice knowing you. What can you do next year? We're not going to see the defending Grey Cup champs in the playoffs. Toronto did not make it. Now, Ricky Ray, I think, who was the starting quarterback, they lost him very early, and they had been scrambling all year to find somebody to replace this guy. And they've never stumbled onto him. To me, this was a team that probably should have traded. This is probably a team that probably should have traded for Manziel. Tried a little harder to trade for Manziel, but maybe they think Ricky Ray will come back next year. I think it's Ricky Ray. Haven't had to say his name in a long time because he was injured like first week with a neck injury, and I mean, this is a guy who was already in advanced football age, and he had, pretty serious injury, and Toronto has never really recovered from that. Not that Toronto was a super strong team last year, but they won. I think they were 9-9 last year. So this leads us to tonight's games. We have 2 games on the docket tonight. All these games are important except for one. There's only one game this week that is just not important at all. It has no significance and no bearing, and it's being played tomorrow in Toronto. But let's get into the other games. Let's go with Hamilton at Ottawa. Once again, Hamilton and Ottawa, they're starting their home-and-home series. Next week they'll play in Hamilton. Tonight they play in Ottawa. If Ottawa wins this game, it gives them 2 victories to Hamilton's none, because Ottawa won the first meeting like 21-15 or something like that. So Ottawa's won the first game already. If Ottawa wins another game, that gives them a little bit more clout, because now they'll be 1 game up. Both these teams are 8-7. This is in Ottawa. I believe Hamilton is playing way better, but if you look, these 2 teams are almost, across the board, they put up almost the same numbers. They're both 4-3 at home. They're both 4-4 on the road. They've both given up relatively the same amount of points, 361 for Hamilton, 367 for Ottawa. But Hamilton has scored 441 points, and Ottawa scored like 370 something, 375, somewhere in there. So the teams are relatively, across the board pretty much the same, but Masoli has had a better season than Harris. But once again, Ottawa also has Powell, who's a better running back sometimes when he decides that he wants to really get in there and do something. But this is a tough game to pick, because both of these teams are going to be up for this. This is in Ottawa. But I think Hamilton's got the better team. I really do. I just think Hamilton Hamilton is one of those teams that plays sometimes to the level of their competition. And, good thing this week their competition is good competition, because it should mean you get one of their better games. I'm going to say Masoli outduels Harris, and I'm going to say Hamilton gets this victory. Because I think Hamilton is ultimately going to win this division. I think Hamilton's playing better at this time of the year than Ottawa is. Ottawa, for me, is still way too inconsistent. Last week, Powell, and this is what I keep saying about Powell, it's like he is not super consistent. If you look at Powell's numbers from last week, he had 9 carries for 40 yards. Now that's 4 yards a carry, 4.5 yards a carry. That's not bad. But 40 yards, and they only gave him the ball 9 times, which is, if you're getting, but in the CFL, you got to get more yards on the ground than that. And Powell, like I said, he'll have that game 150 yards, and then he'll do this, where he only gets like 40. And maybe a lot of that is the offensive game plan, but to me, if you got a running back that's that good, feed him the ball. You might have to keep that ball out of Masoli's hands. You might have to feed Powell. You might have to feed him a lot more just so that you can keep that ball out of Masoli's hands. Because if it's going to be a shootout, I think Masoli he outduels Harris. You have Edmonton and BC. Once again, Edmonton right now would be on the outside looking in at the playoffs. But only by a half game. But this is in BC. BC's playing pretty well. But Edmonton's got the defending, most, basically the most valuable player. The most. So I would, it's going to be a tough game. I think Riley is kind of turning it up. Right now, he's turning it up at the right time. I'm going to pick Edmonton in British Columbia to win this. I think that Edmonton pulls this off. So far, I picked 2 road teams. This can't be good. Last week, I went 3-1. I'm actually, let me get my paper over here just real quick. 32-17 on my picks. I've almost doubled up my wins over my losses. Almost. That makes me a little bit better than mediocre at this. But this is my first year paying attention to the CFL the way I've this year, and it's been fun doing this. It really has. It's been a kick in the head, and learning all the new players and learning the system a little bit more. I still have so much more to learn. So much more to learn about this, but it's fun picking this up. I can't wait to see how the playoffs roll off, what kind of football is played between the Canadian teams. Now Saturday we get to the insignificant game. Montreal at Toronto. Manziel's going against Franklin. So the Toronto's favored by 4.5 here. Franklin didn't play badly last week. He really didn't. I think Dexter McCluster and Duron Carter and some of these guys, I think they mesh well a little bit better with Franklin. Manziel, though, seems to me to be getting it just a little bit more and a little bit more. I'm going to take another road team here. I'm going Montreal. I'm going to take the Alouettes to beat Toronto. So far I've done all road dogs on this one. Because Hamilton is actually favored by 1.5 over Ottawa in Ottawa. So it kind of strengthens what I've been saying, that Hamilton's playing a little bit better and they have a better offense. Last game, Saskatchewan at Calgary. Calgary is getting 8.5 points, and their offense has been decimated with injuries. I was reading an article on this, and they are missing so many people, and they've been practicing, and they say they're starting to get a little bit better with each other, and the timing's starting to get down, and Bo Levi Mitchell saying all the right things, and Dave Dickinson, who's their coach, is saying, of course, they're saying all the right stuff, but Saskatchewan needs this game badly. They're 2.5 games behind Calgary. If they want any chance to catch Calgary, they have to win this game. Have to. So you got Zach Collaros going up against Bo Levi Mitchell with a lot of young guys and a lot of guys he's not super familiar with. And you got Collaros on the other side of the ball, who's been playing, ever since he came back from injury, he's been playing really, really well. except for the fact I think Saskatchewan last week. If I'm looking at this, I'm gonna look at this a little bit closer here. Saskatchewan got blanked last week by Winnipeg, so it's like that doesn't exactly lead me to say, oh, that Claros was playing real good. Being this is in Calgary, I don't know how you get 8.5, but I'm gonna still take Calgary. I'm not sure if Claros is playing. I mean, I would almost think that maybe Claros isn't playing because of the injury or what. I don't know. I mean, it seems weird to give him 8.5 points with that, but so I'm still gonna say that Calgary pulls this off, and Calgary basically will clinch the division. I think Saskatchewan has too much of an uphill. Even if Saskatchewan wins this one, I think Calgary's going to win one of the next 2 games after that. Calgary's too good to keep losing games and finish 12-6. At some point, Calgary would win again anyway. So Saskatchewan, to me, probably they'll play a tough game, but I still think Calgary's going to pull this off. So the picks are 3 road teams: Hamilton, Montreal, and Edmonton to beat BC, and then I'm taking Calgary to beat Saskatchewan and clinch the number 1 seed. So with a lot of that, this may push BC out of the playoffs, and it could push Edmonton into the playoffs, I think that would give them the crossover spot. Could put them right there with Winnipeg as well. But it's gonna be a fight for those last playoff spots. There's still 3 teams vying for 2 spaces, so it's gonna be fun to watch. I think Edmonton will pull a little bit ahead of BC in BC, so I'm picking a couple of upsets. I'm picking 3 road teams, and I'm probably gonna go 0-4. I'll probably do terrible this week, but I'm gonna stick with those picks. I think they're solid picks. I think I'll be okay. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. With all that being said, to the troops, past, present, and future, thanks for the freedom.